What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with a mint on card vintage Star Wars market update. Everything from, I think I've got maybe one or two early card backs, and then it's all kind of ESB and Return of the Jedi, things like that. But I did pick out a couple of baggies that sold at auction that I wanted to use to kind of fill out the video. There hasn't been many really good mint on card sales that I could pull from here recently, and I think it's because a lot of the ones I've been tracking are still kind of in auction. They had 9-day auctions. So I wanted to fill it out with a few baggies first. So let's go ahead and take a look at these. I sent these to my Patreon supporters, letting them know they were at auction. But there were a couple of really nice baggies here. This one was the Hoth Rebel Soldier. And this one is, I think, an ESB C or D. And nice looking example, $193.19. I feel like the Hoth Rebel Soldier in a baggie is always really expensive. Chewbacca, yeah, ESB C baggie, the tape sealed baggie for Chewbacca. This was kind of wrinkled, and so that kept the price down. $153.50 on that one. And I've had this question a lot, asking like, what goes into like the grading of a baggie? I'm not saying you got to grade baggies, but if you're a crazy person like me and you want to get baggies graded, they look at not only the condition of the figure, obviously, but they look at the condition of the baggie. If there's any holes or rips in the baggie that's big enough for either the figure or the weapon to come out of the baggie, then they won't grade it. But if it's got some rubbing to the ink on the baggie, the actual printing on the baggie, that'll affect the grade. And then, if it's wrinkled like this or heavily scratched up or frosted over, all of those factors will bring down the grade of a baggie. And so here's an example. I'm going to come back to the layout, but here's an example of like a minty, a really clean baggie. This is the heat sealed Zuckuss baggie that was obviously featured on the 47 back ESBs as a mail away. This baggie is about as good as it gets, in my opinion. It's super crisp. There's no heavy wrinkles to the baggie itself. It's obviously a heat-sealed baggie, so you don't have to worry about the tape being fake or retaped and things like that. Super crystal clear. The ink on it is perfect. The figure is perfect. This is about as time capsule version of a baggie that you could find. And that one still sold for $70. So not particularly expensive because it's pretty common. It's pretty easy to find this baggie. But, if you're looking at what makes up a baggie that would get a good grade, that's a good example versus the Chewbacca, which would not get a good grade because it's all wrinkly and kind of, I don't know whether this tape has started to fall off or whether that's a second piece of tape. It's just for me, it's hard to gauge a tape sealed baggie as being legit or not, unless it's been graded or if I'm getting it from a friend of mine that I trust. But buying them on eBay, I have no idea if this baggie is legit taped or not. You're making a guess that it's legit. Here's a Leia. This one does look legit. This one has the white made in Hong Kong lettering on it, and I think it's the SWA baggie that is the white made in Hong Kong, and I believe that is a tape sealed baggie. I didn't look at it versus the SWCA baggie guide that's online, but this would be an example of a very crisp, clean-looking baggie that I would probably roll the dice on as legit. It just looks really, really clean to me. No kind of residue around the tape, things like that. And it sold for $326, which is probably about right for an SWA baggie for Leia. So, again, you might get it in hand, and you send it off to the graders, and they say, no. It's not legit. So, you're taking a little bit of a risk. You really got to look at these tape sealed baggies, especially versus some of the guides that are available out there online to make sure it's legit. But that one looks legit to me, just at first blush. $326 took that home. We talked about the Forlom. Here's another common one that should sell for about $150. This is the SWC baggie, the Sears Cantina kind of box set baggie for Hammerhead. Obviously the same for Walrus Man, ? Or Greedo. So there's a few different alien cantina creatures that usually came in this SWC baggie. I think it was Walrus Man and Hammerhead. But, it's got kind of a General Mills logo on there in blue, and they are heat sealed baggies. So that one sold for $150. That's about right. They might go for $300 to $350 in high grade, already graded. So, $150 or so is about right for that one. Now let's get to the mint on cards, which is the meat and potatoes of this video. Here was one that was sold by a seller I bought from in the past, LM Lane 3. I don't know this seller at all, but I bought from him, and I bought some nice examples of stuff from him. This one was an AFA 75 12-back B Leia. 75, 75, 80 were the sub-scores. Crystal clear blister, archival case on that one. Beautiful. Fairly high grade Princess Leia, and that one sold for $16.50, which I thought was a very fair price. Obviously, the blister was maybe a little bit generous on the grading there. They gave it a 75. It had a pretty pronounced crunch on it that really shows up there. To me, that's more like a 70 blister. That's just my personal opinion. So, you know, maybe AFA and all the other grading companies, maybe they give you a little more leniency on these early 12 backs. Since it's a survivor, I don't know that. I'm just speculating. You know, structurally, the seal on it was really good, but it did have a really big ding on it. And I've gotten 70s, or I've seen 70s on blister scores for blisters that are like this, or even in better condition. And this one did get a 75. So, you know, maybe that's why he priced it where he did. You know, they priced it at $16.50 for a 12-back B Leia. Pretty good price, in my opinion. Versus even some of the ones we saw that just sold at Hakes. So I thought that was very fair for what it was. But, you know, you could argue maybe that the blister score was overgraded. This seller had some beautiful ESB cards that sold. This was the 41A Survival Kit Offer Death Star droid, one I've got in my collection. It looked really clean just at first blush. It did have some, you know, light creases and things like that by the hang tab, some sticker residue by the Empire Strikes Back logo. That still sold for $3.15, which I thought was a very fair price, just given what it was. You know, it had some issues at the top of the card, so probably like a 75 grade at best for that one. Next up was a beautiful offer list 41-back Darth Vader. And, you know, again, it had a fairly pronounced crease running from the bottom of the card all the way up to Darth Vader-ish, kind of right in here by the name pill. But clear blister, or clear-ish, you know, it looks like it might be slightly yellowing. I don't know. But any Empire Strikes Back, see there, it looks clear. Any Empire Strikes Back mint on card Darth Vader, even with these condition issues, you're going to pay a lot of money for it. I mean, they're just very, very tough to find in high grade or reasonably priced. And they tend to command $900, which is what this sold for. You know, you might be an AFA 80. I think I saw an AFA 80 48-back Revenge of the Jedi that sold for big money. It was like $1,600 that sold for recently. So, you know, they're very expensive. You could almost make the argument that an Empire Strikes Back Darth Vader MOC is about the same price as like a 20-back now. I mean, it's gotten very, very tough to find that. So anyway, that one did sell for $900 in an auction. And then we had a 41-back Greedo. And that one was clear blister, again, unpunched with a price sticker in the upper right. Just a lot of scuffing on the back. The front presents nicely. It's just the back that was in kind of rough shape with all the scuffing on it. So, again, probably a 75 at best. But that one sold for $316. And I just got a 45-back Greedo AFA 80 at Hakes, which after the buyer's premium and everything, it was around $460. So I feel pretty good about that number relative to an ungraded one that was in definitely worse condition. And mine was unpunched as well. No price sticker. This one was unpunched or partially unpunched with a price sticker. And it only sold for about $150 less than what I paid for mine already graded. So I feel pretty good about that Greedo. Next up, we had an AFA 80 mint and seal box Luke Skywalker laser pistol. So this is one that you don't see pop up very often, especially at auction. Near mint, 80 grade, mint and seal box. So it's still got the wrapper and everything, still factory sealed. Awesome, awesome example. I always love the backs of these. The backs has got a nice close-up of Luke Dagobah from VC44 for you TVC fans. Now, it looked like it had a rip or something going right there, which I don't know what that was. Maybe it was an offer sticker or price tag, who knows. But very awesome example of the laser pistol, AFA 80 graded, and it sold for $735. I was expecting kind of $900 on that one. That's where you usually see them sell. So again, I think in a make an offer or buy it now situation, it might have gotten $900 if he had been patient. But in an auction, typically we'll get a little bit less, and it did sell for $735 free shipping. Very nice item though. Next up was one that a Patreon supporter was bidding on, and I did not sent it out or anything. He just alerted me to it. I did not see it. But this was an AFA 80 Princess Leia. This one was the 31 back B. Now, it was labeled 80, 90, 80. But I wanted to point this one out because if you look at the neck on this Leia, it's turning green. And that's a pretty common thing for the for some Leia Bespins, that for the crew neck version of Leia, the neck would turn green, even inside the blister like that. And some people actually prefer it. They want to have that green neck Leia. And I just thought it was kind of a cool item that my Patreon supporter alerted me to. He didn't end up winning it. It ended up selling for 730 euros, which is 790 US dollars. This is a seller I think I bought from in the past, though, Darth Farger. I know I've covered this seller's items in the past, but this was a pretty cool item. The infamous green neck Leia Bespin is just kind of a weird factory defect for some of these early Leias that where the plastic degrades to like a greenish color. So pretty cool item. And again, $790 took that one home. Next up, this was a nice one. I sent this out to my Patrons. I don't know if anyone bought it or not, but this was a clear blister Dengar on the 41 back. I think this is the E back, if memory serves. Yeah, 41E, unpunched, beautiful condition, Smile Factory. You could make an argument that maybe the blister is starting to yellow very slightly, but very nice condition. I mean, usually Dengars, the blisters are always beat up because they're so wide because of that big backpack he has. This is the Chris W. wrapped in a bath towel on his head variant, and a very cool item though. It was listed for $400, which I thought was very fair. I thought that was a very fair price for it. Very lightly yellowed maybe, but I think that every day would get an 80 grade overall, and just tough to find one of those in clean condition. So $400 took that one home in a buy it now situation. Here was another one I sent out to my Patreons. I don't know if anyone bought it or not, but it was a 48. It was labeled a 48C, but Brett on FET commented saying it's the 48B. Brett, who cares? Who cares if it's a 48B or C? I'm just kidding. But yeah, the 48B is the sticker, and you can tell it's kind of like a sticker there, versus the 48C Revenge of the Jedi was printed on there. So it is the 48B. Brett is right, but it was still a very nice R2-D2 sensor scope 48B, and it looks like it maybe is slightly yellowed at most, but it had one little crease in the upper left there, some kind of indentation. But largely, it was in really great shape. The stem, everything was in really good shape. I think it gets a 75 plus, maybe an 80 for this one, but that is an awesome item. There's something about that Revenge of the Jedi sticker that really looks nice with R2-D2 and the blue background of the card back. It was listed for $400, and the best offer accepted on that was $375. So didn't come off too much, but they really shouldn't on a 48B R2-D2 clear-ish blister. I mean, if it's not clear, it's very slightly yellowed, but sometimes it looks clear, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know, but very nice looking 48B, Brett, of the R2-D2 sensor scope. And again, the final sales price on that and a make an offer situation was $375. Next up, these I sent out to my Patreons kind of as the auctions were ending. I really wanted to bid on this 45 back Star Wars Display Arena Yoda, very lightly yellowing, but it's a brown snake Yoda, and it's on a Empire Strikes Back card back, which harder to find. It's harder to find. Usually the orange snakes are on the 32Bs, which is the most common, but this one I thought was really nice, and while it was yellowing slightly, I think overall it was in very good shape. And again, this is the same seller I bought my 48C back for, or it might have been a B. I think it was a 48C Yoda from in a buy it now situation. But this one sold for $610. Very fair number, I think, for a brown snake Yoda on an Empire Strikes Back card back. It had some very light condition issues, which probably held the price back a little bit. But I think this gets a 75 plus, maybe a low 80. But, it had some litho tears in the upper left where the sticker was removed. I think it gets a 75 plus. But that was nice. And then he also had the Return of the Jedi 77A Yoda with the brown snake, and this one was also yellowed, but very good shape. I think this one was in better shape. Light crease in the upper left-hand corner, and there was a small scuff right there in the right-hand side by the racetrack, but blister had one little slight ding to it, but, you know, structurally the car was in really good shape, unpunched. I think this one gets a low 80, yellowed 80. So this one was a little better shape, and it's clear-ish. It's not nearly as yellowed as maybe some 77 backs are for Yoda, and that's why it sold for what it did, $812 on that one. Very nice example, and again, the 45 back sold for $610. Both of those good prices, I feel like, very fair. Next up was a Kenner Canada qualified graded AFA 75 Jabba the Hutt. So this is the Canadian example of the Jabba the Hutt playset, qualified graded 75. So unused contents, one of the sides was no longer sealed, but very cool item. I don't know if I've ever seen one of these on eBay before. So very cool to have Le Retour du Jedi. And then on the other side, it has the English box. So very cool. It was listed for $13.60, and the best offer accepted on that was $11.26 for an AFA 75 qualified grade Jabba the Hutt playset. So $11.26 took that home in a make an offer situation. I did not see this one at all. I just happened upon this one randomly, but this was an AFA 85 archival case Revenge of the Jedi proof card for Han Solo, and it sold at $16.25 on 2 bids. Very fair price, in my opinion. That's a price I would have paid. I didn't have any money because I spent it all on Hakes, but this was a very nice unpunched card. It looks like it had maybe a little scuff right there in the yellow, which is unfortunate. But overall, very nice example of the proof card for Han Solo in Hoth Battle Gear. And again, $16.25 took that home. Free shipping. And then speaking of Han Solo in Hoth, here's a Return of the Jedi Palatoy 65 back. And at 85, 85, 85. So straight 85s for the sub score. This is not a Toy Tony. This is a true Palatoy 65 back. You can see the back there, freshly graded. That one was listed for 495 pounds. I had it on my watch list. I thought it was just a smidge high, but he did finally take it, a best offer accepted on that one for 440 pounds, which translates to 556 US dollars. Again, probably a little higher than I wanted to go. I'd probably go 500 personally, but very nice example. Clear blister, straight 85s, you know, probably about right, but I'm being cheap. Beautiful example of the Palatoy Han Solo. Next up was an AFA 80 yellowed blister 65 back C Emperor offer for Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight. It did have a Montgomery Ward price sticker. I used to love Montgomery Ward. It was a punched example. It was listed over in the UK for 365 pounds. The best offer accepted on that one was 325 pounds, which equates to 411 US dollars. That's about right. You know, that seems like a pretty fair price to me. Had some high subgrades too, 80, 85, 90. So it had a 90 sub score for the Jedi, Luke Jedi, as it should. I mean, it's got an inner tray that holds the figure in place, so there can't be any rubs there. The only thing that could really happen, I guess, is plastic degradation, but you don't really see that much with Luke Jedis. So 90 sub score for the figure, 85 for the blister, even though it's heavily yellowed. But, you know, again, it sold for about $411. Next up, we had a Palatoy Tri-Logo. I did send this out to my Patreons, and they did snap that up. I thought this one would grade an 80 very easily. This one was the AT-ST driver, and it went for about what I thought was fair market value. Usually, even a nice clean one is not particularly hard to find, and they do not, they're not particularly expensive. It had some very soft creases that only show up in certain light, and to the seller's credit, they showed in certain light. But, you know, looking at it front on, I think it probably gets maybe a 75 sub score for the card, but the blister is pristine, figure is pristine. I think it pulls up, you know, it's probably 75 or 80 for the card. Blister is 85 all day long, and then the figure is 85. So I think it automatically gets probably an 80 overall, even if they ding the card back for that slight wave to it. But I think you put that, you know, put a stack of books on that bad boy, and that straightens it out a little bit. But I think that one definitely gets an 80 overall. Really nice example for $158 with $6 shipping. I thought that was a fair deal. Next up was an AFA 80 Luke Skywalker in his Stormtrooper disguise, and this one actually went for less than I expected. Probably because it was a punched example with the ugly Toys R Us price sticker kind of in a bad spot. that covers up the Star Wars Power of the Force logo, but it also did have a 75 subscore, which maybe brings it down a little bit, but it had 285 subscores, overall 80 grade. 1111, I think, is a good deal for it, given that we've seen some loose graded AFA 85 Luke Stormtroopers go for that price. I mean, it's crazy what they've done here lately. So I thought that was a great price for a mint on card example, even relative to some of the others we've seen. I mean, I was thinking like maybe at the low end, 13 to 1400 bucks. At the upper end, maybe even 15. So I thought that was a pretty good price at 1100. And then finally, we had a KB Toys Overstock 2-pack. I always try to cover these when I see them. This one was Bib Fortuna with Han Solo in his indoor trench coat. And that one sold in an auction for $305. So again, very tatty, very beat up, but it was advertised as fully sealed. And, well, no, it wasn't fully sealed. It had a little crack there at the bottom of it, but nothing that would allow a figure to escape. But you know, it's just all of these 2-packs are always beat up from KB Toys because they were just thrown in bins, but always cool to see different combinations of it. And in this case, it was Han Trenchcoat and Bib Fortuna. $305 took that home in an auction plus $13 shipping. So I hope you enjoyed this look at a few baggies as well as mainly mint on cards that sold here recently. Thanks again for watching. Please leave a like and I'll be back soon.